Hey guys, it's Cody with After 5 Outdoors. I got Tony Elwell from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources here with me today. We're going to be talking about the 2021 Minnesota deer hunting season, all the rules and the regulations. We're going to try hammer through the season dates, the licenses that you need, permit areas, transporting firearms, site tag validations, all those things, party hunting. We're going to try to go through all these things to make it a little bit clearer. I know there's always some confusion with some of the rules, and we're going to try to clarify that today. So, Tony, let's talk about the deer hunting season this year.
All right, so we are already in full swing with the archery season, which opened in September. That's going to run all the way through the end of December 31st. Coming up quick is our rifle season, our regular firearm season. That's going to open up on the 6th. We've got a couple different what we call series. So we've got a 100, 200, and 300 series areas where we can hunt, and they're basically different seasons. So the 100 series, that's going to encompass most of the Northeast. That will reach down into the Northwest a little bit. We've got a couple permit areas kind of in the eastern part of the Northwest that are going to fall into that 100 series. That is our long season. That is the 2 weeks. 6th to the 21st of November, that season is going to run. The rest of the state also opens up on the 6th, our 200 series that encompasses most of the Northwest. That's our 1 week season. That's going to go through to the 14th. And then the 300 series, which is going to be further south, that'll open up same time frame as the 200. The unique thing about the 300 season is that there's also a later season, so there's an A and a B for the 300. If people are going to want to hunt that, they can take a look at the regulations, and it's going to explain that more. But for up here, we've got the 100 and 200, what we're looking at.
And we are in the northwest part of the state here, so a lot of the stuff we talk about is going to pertain to the whole state, but some of the intricate details will be about the northwest. So if you have some questions about other portions of the state, you can look at the regs, or you can contact your local conservation officer, and they should be able to help you out as well. So, can you kind of go through some of the licensing things that you're probably going to run into to clarify a little bit?
Right. So, mentioned the archery and the firearms and the muzzleloader season. A person in Minnesota, non-resident, you can buy all three of those licenses and hunt all three of those seasons. Okay. So we've got, you go buy your license, and the top portion of that license is the actual license. That's like your fishing license.
So actually I have, this is actually a bear tag, but they're very similar.
Yep,
so
they're
it's going to look kind of like this, just won't have all just don't dot out your name like I did.
Right. The top portion is your license. It's like your fishing license, your small game license. The bottom portion is what is referred to as a site tag. A lot of people will call this a buck tag, which it is. This is the only tag that you can legally tag a legal buck with. You can tag a doe with this as well. We have a different kind of a doe license that you can buy, and it's called a bonus permit, and that is for additional antlerless deer. Now, we have different permit areas throughout the state. We'll talk about that a little more. That will allow you to take additional does. But this main tag is your buck tag. So if you're going to go hunt archery, you don't have a bonus permit, and you're in an area where you can take additional deer. If you were to shoot a doe and tag it with this tag right here, you can no longer tag legally a buck with your bow equipment. You can still buy a firearms license and go out and shoot your buck, or a muzzleloader license and go out and shoot your buck. But once this tag is used up on a doe, you can't legally tag a buck. So if you're in an area that allows for bonus permits, and you want to still have that ability, if you're archery hunting or even firearms hunting, to shoot a buck, make sure you go out and get that bonus tag. And you can fill either one first. There's no restriction on that.
So now, if you purchase a bonus tag for archery and you're going rifle hunting, is that bonus tag still valid for the rifle season?
It is. That bonus tag isn't an archery bonus tag, or it isn't a muzzleloader bonus tag. It's just a bonus tag, and it's good through any of those deer seasons that we have. So if you go out and you buy a couple bonus tags, and you don't fill them with your bow, you can use them for archery, you can use them for muzzleloader, that's fine.
Okay, so let's say it's opening morning.
Yep.
Man, I forgot to get my license on Friday. You go to the store, it's 8 a.m., you buy your license. It's not actually good that day. It wouldn't be good until Sunday.
It wouldn't be good until the 7th. So if you buy your license after legal shooting hours, that license is not going to be valid until the next day, and that includes bonus tags. A few years back, you were able to buy a bonus tag and use it immediately. That's no longer the case. If you buy that tag before legal shooting hours, it is good for that day that you buy it. So if you go out at 4 in the morning and stop at the gas station and buy your tag, it's going to be good to go for that morning, whether it's a bonus tag or a regular license.
Okay, so you're hunting in Minnesota. What is the actual limit statewide of deer that you can shoot?
Statewide bag limit for deer in Minnesota is 5. You can legally tag up to 5 deer. There are some exceptions. We've got some CWD zones and things like that. But here in the Northwest and the majority of the state, where we don't have those special regulations, a person can legally tag 5 deer. Only 1 buck though. A person can only legally tag 1 buck. And that doesn't mean 1 buck on your archery tag, 1 buck on your rifle tag, 1 buck on your muzzleloader. It doesn't matter. If you shoot a buck during archery season, you're no longer able to tag one for the rest of those other seasons. You can still buy bonus tags or tag a doe on that regular license. But 1 buck, that's it. So 5 deer, 1 can be a buck. That's our bag limit.
All right, so we're getting to the end of October here, and we actually have a deer season coming up this weekend. That's going to be the youth season. So can you kind of go through some of the rules of the youth season that's coming up?
Sure. The October youth season opens 21st, and Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4-day season. Give our youth that first crack at those deer. Basically the same rules and regulations, licenses. We have youth age 10 to 17 are allowed to hunt during that period as long as they're with an adult or legal guardian who is not hunting. There is a youth license. Age 10 to 12, it's free. You just go in, you get that license, they have that tag. 13 to 17, I believe it's $5 or something like that for that license. The question comes up, hey, I buy this license, is this good for firearm season and muzzleloader? It is. That license, that youth license is good throughout all those seasons. So if they don't use that tag, they can use it the rest of the season.
So that youth tag is good for the rest of the season if they don't fill it during the youth season?
That is correct. So a couple little different things with youth season. That youth license is good for either sex deer, no matter where you are in the state, whatever the permit area is, with the exception of bucks only. If you're hunting in a bucks only permit area, that youth is only going to be allowed to shoot a buck and tag a buck. All the other areas are permit areas. You don't have to have a doe permit. That youth can tag a doe, shoot a buck or a doe, and tag it with that license. The limit during the youth season is 1 deer. We may be hunting in a permit area that allows for 3 deer during the regular season. Unfortunately, during the youth season, it's only going to be 1. Okay. We can't party hunt with our youth tag. So we got brother and sister out there. Sister can't shoot 2 deer and use brother's tag.
All right, so you're out hunting, deer runs out, you drop the deer, you walk up to him, he's dead. What do you got to do next?
We have to validate our site tag, okay? And there's 3 things that we need to validate on that site tag. We need to validate the day of the month. So if we shoot a deer opening day of rifle season, we got to mark with a pen or a permanent marker or a knife. We got to mark that 6th. Then we also have to mark the month, November in this case. And then the 3rd thing we have to mark is either the AM or the PM. A lot of folks will miss that. It's kind of up in the corner. Those 3 things have to be marked and validated before anything happens at that point. From there, we don't necessarily have to affix that tag to the deer. We can string the deer up right where it is, gut it out, field dress it. We can manually drag that deer with a rope. We can tie that deer up, hook it up to an ATV, and drag it on the ground without putting that site tag on it to the back of a truck, as long as it's on the ground. The second we put that deer on or in a motor vehicle, in the bed of a truck, on an ATV, on a snowmobile if we have snow, in a trailer with wheels, that tag needs to be affixed to the deer. 3 different methods for affixing the tag. The traditional method with a buck, attach it to the antler with a string. Zip tie is pretty popular, real easy. We can cut a slit in the ear and run that zip tie or string through there, and there's holes perforated in the site tag so we can hook that up. Or we can do it around the ankle. If we pop a hole between the tendon and the bone, kind of down by the ankle, and wrap it around the bone. That needs to be done before the deer is moved via motor vehicle. Okay.
So the reason that you don't have to put it on if you're dragging it, tag might fall off.
Right. If you're back in the swamp somewhere, you got brush, grass, whatever, it might get ripped off, and we don't want to have that. But
just make sure before you drag it, it's validated.
It's validated before you do anything to that deer. It's the first thing you should do. Make it a habit. It's real easy. That tag's got to stay with you, with that deer. And another thing is, if we are party hunting, we'll get into details later, but let's say you and I are hunting, you shoot that deer, you have to be with it, with that tag. You have to be out there. That's part of the legal party hunting deal. So we'll dive more into that later. But validate it right away, tag it when it goes on a motor vehicle. Another exception to that tag, if we're going to drag it, and we drag it all the way back to camp, before we hang it up on the meat pole or at home or whatever, the tag's got to go on. Okay, so it's not just transporting. Once it's back at our hunting camp, at our home, some sort of domicile, before it goes up, it needs to get tagged.
Now, if you're doing it that way, before you start processing that deer, you need to register it too, correct?
Right. So we have 48 hours to register our deer after harvest. An exception would be if we're going to process that deer. That deer needs to be registered before we process the deer. So what can we do before we register? We can take the hide off. We can field dress the deer. We can quarter the deer as long as the head remains attached to one of those quarters. Okay. But the head has to remain attached to one of those quarters. You can't cut the head off a deer to go bring it to the taxidermist before it's registered. Okay. So register the deer. You've got 48 hours. Otherwise, it's got to be registered before you start to process.
Well, there's registration stations. You can register the deer. Actually, if you shoot the deer, you could actually register it right there as long as you have phone service.
Yep.
You can do it online.
You can do it online. You can do it telephonically over the phone, or you can do it in person. Those are our three methods for registration.
One thing just to tie into the transportation part, when you got your deer processed, you got everything done, you have the leftover carcass. You cannot put that on, you can't leave that like on a WMA, you can't leave it on state property, but if you have private land, you could leave it there if it's your private land or you have permission from someone, like if you want to use it to draw in varmints or coyotes, stuff like that. But just, you can't leave it on state land or WMA.
That's correct. The other option is garbage, refuse. Check with your local garbage companies, because you may not be able to put that in your household trash.
Right.
But those are the two methods: private land or private garbage disposal.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the legalities: archery, rifle, muzzleloader. Let's go through that, touch on that real quick.
So as far as equipment, with archery equipment, we've got to have a bow that has at least 30 pounds of draw weight at full draw or just beyond full draw. Our broadheads have to be a barbless design. They have to have at least two cutting edges that are 7/8 of an inch or bigger. We can use mechanical type or expanding broadheads. Same type of deal, have to be a barbless design, 7/8 of an inch or bigger before they expand, and they can only expand up to 2 inches at maximum expansion. And then no explosive tips, no poison with that. We can use a mechanical release as long as the hunter's own power is drawing and holding the weight of that. Mechanical releases are legal. Crossbows, we can use crossbows during our archery season if we have a permit, or if we're 60 years or older, we can use that crossbow on our archery tag during archery season. We can legally use a crossbow. A youth can use a crossbow during the youth season that's coming up. Anybody can use a crossbow during firearms season on a firearms license. Same types of things. Broadheads, same kind of parameters. Bolts have to be at least 10 inches long. We have to have a mechanical safety on that crossbow. As far as crossbows on the market, most of them are going to meet the specifications as far as pounds per square inch. You can take a look at the website, or the regulations is going to be more detailed on what that has to be. Okay. That's our archery equipment.
Okay. Now moving on to rifle.
Rifle, for our regular rifle season, Regular firearm season, we have to have single projectile center fire ammo, so 220 or greater center fire. That round has to be a hollow point or expandable. We can't use full metal jacket rounds for our firearms season.
All right, so later on in November, have the muzzleloader season. What are some of the legalities of the muzzleloaders?
Muzzleloaders have to be a black powder. They can't be smokeless powder. We've got breech loading muzzleloaders on the market now. Those are not legal during muzzleloader season on a muzzleloader tag in Minnesota. You have to load from the muzzle. It has to be of that type of design. We can use a smooth bore muzzleloader if we want, but that has to be at least 45 caliber. Otherwise, a rifled muzzleloader can be as low as 40 caliber or bigger. We are allowed to use scopes on our muzzleloaders during muzzleloader season as well.
All right, in Minnesota, what is the definition of a legal buck?
Legal buck in Minnesota is defined as a deer with at least one antler that's at least 3 inches long. So if we've got a spike buck with small little spikes, or a button buck is still considered an antlerless deer. So if it doesn't have at least one antler that's 3 inches long or bigger, that would be defined or considered to be a antlerless deer.
Okay, so if you're out deer hunting and you shoot a deer and it is a little spiker and he's got one spike and it's 2 inches, you got to tag that as a antlerless deer.
That is correct.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, there's a lot of different deer permit areas throughout the state. Can you run down a little bit on those?
Sure. We've got our bucks only. Obviously, you can only take a buck with your tag there. We've got our permit areas for antlerless lottery, like we've always had. So in those areas, you can take a buck on your tag or a doe if you have an antlerless permit. Next step up would be our either sex permit areas. We used to call them hunter's choice. The next step up from that would be our 2 deer permit areas. They used to be called managed. Now it's called 2 deer permit areas. And then we've got our 3 deer permit areas and then our 5 deer permit areas. And those permit areas are going to be our metro area, those 600 series permit areas, and down in those CWD zones. So bucks only, doe by, or antlerless deer by antlerless permit, either sex, 2 deer permit area, 3 deer permit area, 5 deer permit area. So this can be confusing, but it's really not that hard. We can shoot 5 deer a year. We can tag 5 deer in Minnesota. A person can legally tag 5 deer in Minnesota. You can only tag 1 buck, okay? When we go into those permit areas, let's say I'm hunting in a 2 deer permit area. I can take 2 deer if I have a bonus tag, and I can tag a deer with my regular license. Once I take those 2 deer in that 2 deer permit area, I can no longer hunt in any 2 deer permit area in the state, okay? Our license is good all throughout the state, right? So if I take those 2 deer in a 2 deer permit area and I still want to hunt, I can take 3 more deer, but I'm going to have to move into a different permit area that's going to allow me to do that. So a 3 deer permit area. Here in the Northwest, we've kind of got a good mixture, mostly 3 and 2. There's a few either sex permit areas and maybe a lottery area and a couple bucks only permit areas. We start out in a 3 deer permit area, take 3 deer, we're done in those 3 deer permit areas. We move to a 2 deer permit area. As long as we don't go over that 5 deer bag limit for the state, we're good to go. Now, to clarify some other things, if we're hunting a state park or a special hunt, you know, a Ripley hunt, or we've got a bunch of different state parks here in the Northwest, those are considered special hunts. If you take a deer in those hunts, the deer that you take do not count towards your permit area limit, but they do count towards your statewide bag limit. So if you're hunting a state park in a 3 deer permit area, you take 2 deer, you can still take 3 deer in that permit area. They don't count towards that permit area limit, but they do count to the greater.
Towards the overall 5.
Yes.
Okay. One thing that we missed when we were talking about rifles and muzzleloaders and all that stuff, transportation of firearms. How can you transport your firearm legally as you're going to hunting in your vehicle and on ATV or however?
Sure. We can transport a firearm uncased in Minnesota as long as we're not in a city that's 2,500 or more. And we have to be on our way to go hunt. We have to be in the act of hunting or on our way home to hunt. They can be uncased, but they do have to be unloaded. And in Minnesota, a loaded weapon is defined as a weapon that has any rounds in the gun whatsoever. So if you have a detachable magazine with rounds and it's in the gun, that is considered loaded, even though you might not have one in the chamber locked and ready to go. So it has to be completely empty. If you've got a bandolier, you know, some people will have that on their buttstock with the rounds on the outside. That's fine. The rounds are not in the gun. That would be considered unloaded. So on your ATV, in your truck, on your snowmobile, it can be uncased, but it has to be unloaded.
Okay.
And you have to have a license to hunt, and you have to be hunting.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Blaze Orange requirements.
Okay, Blaze Orange. We've got youth season coming up here, a couple days. Obviously, got to wear Blaze Orange. Archery hunters, anytime there is a open firearm season, so youth season, regular firearm season, and muzzleloader season. Our archery season is open during that entire time. Archery hunters don't have to wear Blaze Orange unless one of those seasons is open. So starting in that youth, archery hunters are going to have to wear Blaze Orange if they want to hunt. Blaze Orange requirements: if we wear a hat, it has to be Blaze Orange. The visible portion has to be Blaze Orange if we wear a hat. Otherwise, our upper torso has to be Blaze Orange, excluding the arms and the gloves. Or Blaze Pink, that is also legal. It's been legal for a few years now. If we use a camouflage blaze pattern, it has to be 50-50 or better with orange. So at least 50% of that pattern needs to be Blaze Orange or Blaze Pink. And again, trappers, anything like that during an open firearm season have to wear that Blaze Orange. The exception is waterfowl hunters during those seasons. Obviously, you're on the water. You don't need to wear the Blaze Orange.
Okay.
Wild duck hunting.
All right, so kind of the last thing as we go through here is wildlife management areas and some of the rules on them, and when we refer to them as WMAs, just so you guys are aware of what we're talking about. But can you go over some of those rules?
Sure. In the Northwest, in the past, we were allowed to put up portable stands and leave them there during the rifle season, the regular firearm season, as long as they were tagged. That rule has gone away. Matter of fact, last season it wasn't in place. Kind of a grace period, we didn't enforce it, but we're enforcing it this year. So basically in a WMA, what goes in has to come out that day. You can't leave a stand in there. You can't leave a camera in there. You can't leave a blind in there. You can't leave your equipment in there, whether it's up or laying in the ground. It has to come out every night now. That's our WMA rules, and that's what's going on now with our WMAs. Up here in the Northwest, we have some different rules as far as ATVs go during the rifle season. Up here in the Northwest, we have two different areas that we're allowed to use our ATVs, an A and a B. The A portion is going to be more towards the eastern part of the state, and if you consult the regulations, there's going to be a little map in there and it's going to clarify those boundaries. But in that A portion, we are allowed to use ATVs off trail in our WMAs before legal shooting hours, between the hours of 11 and 2, and then after legal shooting hours throughout that firearm season. And again, obviously, to get out to our stand and then to come in for lunch or whatever in that noon time, and then after shooting hours to come home. And we can take those wheelers in there to get a deer, do whatever we need to do off trail. The other portion of that is the day after the close of firearm season. In that A portion, we are allowed to take a ATV off trail to retrieve a deer that we know is dead. So if we shot something that last evening, right before last light, and we didn't recover it, we can go out there the next day with that wheeler and recover it. But we can't have a firearm with us. Now the rest of the Northwest we refer to as the B area. Now, we can use a WMA off trail in those areas only after legal shooting hours and up to 2 hours after legal shooting hours, only to retrieve a deer that we know is dead. Okay, we can't have a firearm with us. So we shoot a deer during the day, we wait till after shooting hours, we leave the rifle at home, we know where the deer is, we hop on our wheeler, we go out there, we got 2 hours to go out there off trail to pick up that deer and bring it in.
All right, so one of the things that is kind of the heritage of Minnesota deer hunting is party hunting. Can we talk about some of the definitions of party hunting, some of the things that you can do party hunting?
Sure. First of all, the definition of a party is 2 or more licensed hunters that are out all afield at the same time using the same equipment. So rifle hunters with a rifle license using rifles would be a party. Bow hunters with bow licenses using bows would be a separate party. So any member of those parties can shoot and tag a deer for any other member of that party, as long as that other member is afield hunting at the same time. So if you've got somebody sitting back at camp because they're not feeling well or they're tired, you wouldn't be able to legally shoot a deer and tag it with their tag because they're not afield. Okay. The other aspect of party hunting is what we call lend and borrow. You buy a license for somebody that's not even going to come out and hunt. You shoot a deer for them, you tag it, you give it to them. That would be illegal. Okay, both you and that person who gave you that tag could get in trouble. The other situation we see, this group comes up to the camp for the weekends. Maybe a few of them got to go back on Monday afternoon to go back to work for the week, and they take their tag and they leave it on the counter. Can't do that. You can't fill that tag unless they are there with you, afield hunting with you at that time.
When you're at work, what are some of the biggest violations that you see?
Once rifle season starts, hands down, it's not even a question. Trespassing, we're going to get a half a dozen calls before 9 a.m. on opening morning. Trespassing is the biggest issue throughout the season, but especially during firearm season. We have a lot of people that like to road hunt up here. They don't have permission to shoot onto somebody else's property, things like that. Trespassing is the #1 thing. So it's important that we know where we're at if we're going to hunt, and that we have permission to hunt on land, to shoot on the land. Another thing is shooting from the roadway. It's unlawful to shoot at a big game animal or a decoy of a big game animal across a roadway or from the roadway. And I think we've talked about this in other videos, but the roadway is defined as not only the traveled portion, but those ditches as well. That's still considered the roadway. So if somebody's standing in the ditch pointed back towards the woods, somebody's doing a deer drive, and you shoot from there, that is illegal. Obviously shooting across the roadway is illegal. It's unsafe, and that's why we have that rule.
So if you're driving the woods and you have posters, you need to be on the land portion from the ditch.
That is correct. Either the private land, or if it's state land, they got to be up off of that public road right of way. And you can, there's a picture of it on the website. If you go into our ATV regulations, it's going to have that. But that's what the definition is. That's a big thing. We talked about that lend and borrow. Validating the site tag, that's a big thing, whether it's malicious or not. A lot of people, they're excited, they just shot a nice buck, whatever, they forget to validate that tag, or they forget to tag the deer before they put it in the back of the truck. Make sure you're doing that. Penalties are steep for those things. Losing animals and possibly hunting privileges, not worth a simple mistake like that.
Right. So hopefully we covered a good majority of the rules and regulations of the 2021 deer hunting season. I hope that it helped you out a little bit. This was kind of a longer video. It took a little bit more time to shoot, put together, and stuff. But if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. I hope you can get out and enjoy God's great outdoors. And Tony, thanks for being here. And it might be a little bit now before we do another regulations video, but we'll be back in the spring for sure for wild turkey. So everyone have a great day. Hope you have a successful and safe deer hunting season. Do it right, and we'll see you on the next one.